Matthias, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat today. I really appreciate it. I'd like to start with a general question. You have a background. You studied classical guitar in Salzburg, and then you went on to do a PhD in musicology at Harvard. And now you're working. One of the things that you're doing is working as a creativity slash tech strategist. Where did the merging of arts and creativity and technology come about in your story? Were you always interested? Were you already working with that in your PhD? Where did this merging between arts and creativity and technology come about?
It's actually going way back into my childhood. I'm a kid of the 80s, and so the Commodore 64 was the thing to have. But I wasn't allowed to have a computer at home. And so I had to go to my friends' places to learn how to program in BASIC and have fun with that thing. And from this early exposure to technology, which I couldn't lay my hands on, then I did a lot of fantasizing about what I would do with the computer. And one of the things that I always liked the computer to do was make music. And so this goes back to my early teen days, I'd say. And then later on, I started to code and learn how to use computers when I had my own computer. Later on, really, when I was only 20 years of age. And so this is where that comes from. It took me a while to really combine the two fields. And it was around the time when I finished my studies at the Mozarteum that I started to do creative projects with the computer. And yeah, at Harvard, then I took some classes in the computer science department. In particular, there was one fascinating course by Avi Pfeffer on music and computer science, and he laid out a map of all of the different intersections of music and computer science and algorithms and so on. And that was really the foundation of a lot of the things that I did later on. So credit to Avi, who has left the field. He's now in a different environment, but that was an awesome course.
Speaking about awesome things, in 2021, you worked on a super exciting project. I'm speaking from Bonn in Germany, and in 2021, it was released. Was later released the documentary, but first there was the actual presentation of Beethoven's 10th Symphony, which was completed with the support of artificial intelligence, which is a topic of a chapter that, together with a few co-authors, you've written for a book which I'm editing, which hopefully will come out in the first semester of 2026. Could you take us back to the beginning of that project? Because in the documentary, there's actually a quote from one of the musicians that I found really fascinating, where he said that the classical music world, they have a sort of technophobia, and it's a very resisting environment. So how did that come about? Could you tell us about the background of that project?
Yeah, it was really one of these things that just came about through a lot of different steps and, of course, a lot of different people involved. Basically, goes back to a moment at a party, like all good stories, where I was talking about my passion to understand music as data. And I was talking to Michael Schult of Deutsche Telekom back then. And a couple of years later, he phoned me and said, hey, we at Deutsche Telekom want to do something special for the upcoming anniversary of Beethoven. And, Deutsche Telekom being a company based in Bonn and Beethoven being born there. He asked me, can we finish these sketches that he never completed? And I said, like, whoa, that's a crazy idea. And I don't know if it's possible, but we need to find out. And then he tasked me to put together a team and to see if it's possible. So I asked Ahmed Elgamal, I asked Walter Verzova, Mark Gotham, Bob Levin was part of the advisory team, the people at the Beethoven House. And we sat down together and we looked at all of the different technology and the source materials. And we thought, yeah, I think we can do this, at least in part. And then we just did it. There wasn't much thinking about it, really. Along the way, you realize, oh my God, what you're trying to do is really hard, and it's also a little bit sacrimonious or sacrilegious, or how do you say it? But we did it nevertheless with the great support of Tim Höttges, Michael Schult, and others at Deutsche Telekom. And yeah, it was just amazing to do it, really. Long before ChatGPT, and everyone said it's not possible, but it was. Yeah.
I remember afterwards I had a meeting with someone from the orchestra and they were sharing with me impressions. And
Yeah,
obviously as we can imagine, it was very much mixed. Some
sure.
people saying, "Oh, Beethoven would never gone in that direction, would never thought about this," or uh, Beethoven was sometimes so unpredictable that it's so hard to define.
Mm.
How did you? What was your general impression of the reaction from both professional musicians, people involved, but also the general public?
It was really mixed because people have very mixed feelings about technology in their lives, and also about what humanity means, and what is their own understanding of what a human is. And so that did not surprise me at all. And granted, I mean, it was very hard to do it, and we could only do it because it was a collaboration between the AI algorithms and humans. And working with an orchestra is very difficult to begin with, because it's 100 people, and you got to align them, and then you come in doing something for the very first time, and that's going to be problematic. But we pulled it off, and I have a lot of respect for people who say, well, we have to preserve our culture and traditions. But I also have this urge, and I'm not alone with that, to move things forward, and to change the way that we create, that we make art, and that we live. And so I think what our project did was it opened the door for this kind of discussion. That's really the great contribution that everyone did. And out of this discussion came a lot of good things, and there was, of course, also a little bit of resentment, and that created like a big communication overflow on the thing, which was great. So if I look back 6 years after, would I do it again? Yeah, definitely. Would I do it differently? Probably, but not fundamentally different, because I think to go in and to shock people a little bit, but at the same time also be very mindful of the tradition of Beethoven and his source material. I studied Beethoven's creative process, so that was for me very important, to be both scientifically sound and also creatively visionary.
And this idea of shocking is also the purpose of art, isn't it? Art has always done this. And I think this resistance that people may have, I think it's in many ways a resistance of change. And I
Mhm.
think from following your writings and things that you defend, I think I align a lot with it, on the sense that we really, I mean, we're not putting the genie in the back in the bottle. Technology always evolves, and as technology evolves, we often need to change our paradigms. Could
Mhm.
you elaborate a little bit on how you think that we need to change the way that we view creativity in
Mhm.
face of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that these artificial neural networks that are trained with the transformer architecture, that they are doing is they are looking at a corpus of texts, music, whatever it is, and they understand all of the different probabilities of the sequences of events in this corpus. And what that does is then it puts a lot of emphasis on the things that are similar. So all of the stuff that is similar in between these different pieces of music, that gets a lot of emphasis. And so when you interact with these AI tools, and you're not careful, you get general output, which is pleasing and it makes sense, but it is not something individual or stylistically out there or special. And I think this is an important thing to realize for creativity as a whole. There is a certain threshold which people try to meet, so that they are considered to be creative professionals. That's the way we do it. This is how it should sound like. But then there's, I think, in my opinion, there's this need and almost obligation for us to go beyond that and to explore what is out there that's also possible, and to take a new avenue. And I think this is what these AIs are forcing us really to do and to deal with. Because if now everyone is going to write perfect texts with the help of ChatGPT, that means that the main point at which you look at these texts has to be the originality of the ideas, of the thinking, of the argument. That is something that has to come from the human. That is something that the students in the university have to learn. That is something that each one of us has to, find a way to deal with and be unique and be a little bit different from everyone else. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it, in my opinion. And that's just my personal opinion. But I think this is what is changing now in our world. The level is higher than it used to be, and there is more need and more urging for us to be individual and unique. And that's frightening, but at the same time very beautiful, because that's what, in my opinion, what we humans are made for, is to find amazing new things out there.
Speaking of creativity and how we view creativity, a few years back, you co-founded Zonophilia Foundation,
Mhm.
which has a mission of disseminating knowledge around creativity and scientific discoveries of creativity.
Mhm.
Could you take us back a little bit about the motivations of founding the Zonophilia Foundation and the general concept and what you have achieved? Because you've develop a series of seminars and workshops. How did that motivation come about at the start?
So when I came back from the US, I was fully engaged in the academic world. I had finished my PhD in musicology. Then I was a faculty member at Harvard, and I was sort of on this academic track. But the reason I came back to Salzburg was to take on a job in the music industry and to manage the estate of the great conductor Herbert von Karajan. And for me, it meant that I was leaving what I perceived to be sort of a place where creativity matters a lot. And I was going into the business world, and I wasn't sure, how that would translate. And so I thought a lot about this. I had a lot of conversations with people, and then I realized, well, that kind of creativity that I'm using in my work is exactly the same kind of creativity that people in the business world are using, or entrepreneurs are using, or scientists are using. And so it felt to me that that was something that wasn't really generally well known. People would say, I'm creative or I'm not creative. There are these geniuses out there who are sort of on pedestals and so much better than everyone else. But I realized, no, it's more like it's an approach to life that is making a difference. And so my wife and I, we decided to curate a little event series to bring people from all walks of life together and share these stories, to inspire one another, to support also a little bit, and to just build a community around it. And that was the beginning. And then later on, the idea of becoming a nonprofit organization was added, and the idea of focusing really on the scientific study of creativity from a neuroscientific perspective. These things came later on. That was the journey. And now we're giving out small stipends every year to young researchers in the field. Some people come more from neuroscience, others from cognitive sciences, others from computer sciences. And we try to make little steps to improve the general knowledge about creativity in our world.
You've also founded the Mindshift,
Mhm.
which, if I understand correctly, it's the idea is to try and support entrepreneurs and in developing creative outputs and embedding technologies. What have been your main? So again, the motivation. I see probably a link there with Sonophilia Foundation. Uh,
Yes.
what uh, what was the motivation in starting? What has been the key learnings as to how
Mhm.
entrepreneurs are trying to develop creative strategies in their organizations?
Mhm. So Sonophilia Foundation is a nonprofit that is focused on supporting research, and the Mindshift is the organization or the company that helps other organizations to achieve certain goals. It's more like a consulting company, if you will. In the Mindshift, I'm working with companies of any size, really, but I'm particularly interested in working with the leadership teams there, in helping them to shape an environment in which people can bring their creativity to the fore and to make it useful for that organization. And I think the single most important aspect of this is this understanding that creativity is not a given talent, but it is like a muscle that you can train. And like any good sports person, you have to prepare yourself before you go to training. You have to maybe have also a little bit of a space where you can do your sport. But you have to be knowledgeable. You have to have a goal. You have to have ways to measure the output. And then slowly but surely you will progress in your sport. And, some people can help you with your technique and with your nutrition, and all of these things are true for creativity as well. And that's really the best analogy I can think of. And when people understand that, they start to intuitively reorganize their organizations around these principles. And this is not about fancy equipment and masseurs coming in and free lunches, vegan style or whatever. No, this is more about a holistic approach to this idea that creativity is something that is inherently human, and we can train it, and we can channel the output of that into our organization's goals. So it sounds a little bit esoteric, maybe for some, but it is scientifically a proven fact, and it works. And that is the beauty of it.
What have been your learnings of implementing that? Because I assume that in many cases you will find some sort of resistance, or people very much used to doing things in a particular way, or sometimes
Mm.
resistance to accepting technology, especially in the case of AI. What have been some of the lessons that you've learned in unlocking that creative potential and introducing technology in these organizations?
It often starts from the top, that organizations want to change in that direction. Um, the learning is that the leaders in these organizations, they need to create urgency within their organization. And that could be, urgency coming out of a competitive situation, or it could be urgency coming out of a more sort of internal reorganization, things like this. The important thing for them is to understand that creating this urgency is important, but you have to do it in such a way that people are not fearful. If they have fear, they cannot be creative. And so that is, I think, the main art of this transformational process. I think all of these things take much longer than you usually think. You have to rely on those people within your organization who are showing the willingness to change and who are already living this kind of life on their own or in their teams, and then work with them to be role models and slowly onboard the others. But I think this idea of creating urgency without creating fear, that's central.
Matthias, I'd also like to take this opportunity to pick your brain on a few topics that are of interest to me at the moment and know what your
Mhm.
views are. One of the topics that is of interest for me at the moment in terms of research is on what I call the flood of artificial creativity. So we see, especially in the latest models like VO3, Sora 2, whenever you have these leaps in innovation, then comes a massive amount of content being produced, which is flooding the internet. And they're obviously, I like to always look at the both sides and the positives and also the challenges. And one of the main issues that are being raised on this is the higher the scale, the lower the value of the creative output.
Mhm.
Um, how do you see this phenomena of this overwhelming amount of content which is being created through AI? So, for example, just some quick examples. Recently, Spotify changed a little bit the regulations towards the uploading of AI music, and then in one go, they kicked out 75 million songs. These are created um, a software to detect uploading of AI music, and they identify 10% of all uploads were AI music. It was about 10,000 songs a day. How do you see this overwhelming amount of content which is generating and the impact it may cause?
Mhm. It's a very important question, and I don't have any easy answers. The issue, I think, is that on the one hand, people are curious now to try out things. And so you have this sort of flood of experiments that are coming in. On the other hand, we have a economic system around music, for instance, but also the other forms in which generative AI products can be used, like social media and so on, which capitalizes on attention. And people seem to think that if they provide more content over their own account, the chances of getting attention are higher. I'm not a social media expert enough to comment on this, but my feeling is that that might be the wrong approach. Um, so what happens is that people are trying out these tools and they think like, great, I can be more productive. But they do it, of course, at the cost of being innovative or being individual, like we talked earlier. And I think that is a big mistake. And I think that what they could be focusing instead on is to find ways to make the output of the AI really something special and something that communicates very well what they try to say, rather than just being another copy of something that has been around. Unfortunately, it seems that there are some pockets in our music ecosystem where this kind of approach still pays off. And I think we need to understand that it's the fundamentals of the market that are driving this behavior.
Speaking of this scaling of production, one of the examples are the artificial artists. And
Mhm.
this week you published a super interesting piece that came out, which I'm going to put the link on the description of this video.
Thank
Um,
you.
that came out at the FAZ Digitalwirtschaft, and you one of the things that you state is that you say that the defensive reaction of the artistic sector is more about protecting it's less about protecting artistic integrity and more about protecting the status quo. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, sure. So you have artists, synthetic performers, as they are sometimes called, or as I like to call them, artificial artists, which are now being fought against by the big organizations in Hollywood that are political organizations for I don't know how to say this in English, Gewerkschaften. Um, they 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 speak on behalf of the actors in Hollywood. And I think what's happening there is that these organizations see that artificial artists and synthetic performers can actually do a very good job in those cases where you're producing for mass market, and you're not actually telling a unique story, but you're going by the schema of what is typically done in the industry. And so whenever that is the case, then AI is very, very good at doing that. There's sort of a whole way of playing as an actor that caters to this kind of general mass taste. And I think they are fearful because they realize that they're putting a lot of the actors who are active primarily in this field out of business. And that means that their own importance is also dwindling as an organization, right? So that's why they are fighting this. If they were really interested in bringing the art of filmmaking to a next level, then they would surely embrace a new technology development. Because we have seen in the history of filmmaking that whenever a new technology comes along, it typically takes a little bit of time, but at some point, great works of art are being produced with it. And if that is your goal, then you should be embracing these experiments and you should be embracing that technology. Make sure that it is available for the filmmakers, the script writers, the directors, the composers, and the actors of this world to create something amazing that is new and hasn't been done before. This is my take on this, and I do hope that people don't confuse the actor's guild speaking with what all of the actors are thinking. Yes, there may be actors who don't like this, but I know also personally of people who are active in the film industry and who are actors who actually like these artificial artists because they think they can be of great use for them as well. So this is the point that I was trying to make, and I hope that a lot of people think alike.
And it's really interesting because I see already in the case of music, which is what I mostly look at, a few artists supporting that. One recent example was 50 Cent, the famous rapper 50 Cent, that because there's so many AI soul music versions, and so they're getting like classic songs and making them in soul version, and they're really well done. And then recently 50 Cent came out supporting his version. There's an Australian band called Silverchair where the drummer Ben Gillies was also saying, "Wow, that's amazing!" Just seeing their songs reinterpreted. Matthias, we're coming to an end now. But before we get to some quick fire questions, just a general one: what is the future of the Mindshift and Zonophilia, and how are you envisioning them progressing?
Well, I don't know. I cannot read the future. I think what we're trying to do is continue on our path to get more people onboarded with this amazing skill of creativity. And I hope that one day we will be no longer needed, because creativity is the #1 skill that we teach in schools, that organizations are looking at when they hire people, and that there's no need for us anymore. I will be continuing to advise companies with the Mindshift to help organizations in that direction. And I'm looking forward to working with anyone out there who thinks that, creativity is something that they want to push amongst their workforce.
That's a very great point. I also fully agree that creativity should be taught in school.
Yeah, and
That's a very good point.
We have to learn how to learn, and we have to learn how to be creative. And if we have those two combined, I mean, what is there something we cannot reach? I don't know. I don't think so.
And to finish off, some quick fire questions. The first one, and it doesn't have to do with AI. Could you name 3 artists that have most influenced you in life?
Ooh, that's really hard, because to single out 3, but I love these lists. So I'm a guitarist. I'd say Eddie Van Halen is #1. I would say Bach as a composer, and I would say maybe James Joyce as a writer.
In times of AI, what makes human creativity unique?
The ability to go outside of what is known.
And to finish up, what is your message to creatives that are concerned about all of the changes that are happening because of AI?
Keep reinventing yourself, because that is one of the most important things that artists have to do.
Matthias, thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it.
It's great talking to you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life one day.
Absolutely.